Filters are an absolute essential for all landscape photographers, and picking the right one for your landscape photography is really crucial. And if you don't know which one to pick, you're going to be really struggling when creating amazing landscape photography photos. So in this video, we're going to talk about just that, the only 2 filters you will ever need for your landscape photography. What's up guys, it's Project Photography back in the video, and today so to answer the question at the beginning of this video, right off the bat, the only 2 filters that I actually use for my landscape photography is a 3-stop B+W ND filter and a 10-stop B+W ND filter. And with these filters, you know, I'm able to do a lot of things like smooth out water, create nice motion in the water, do a lot of things with long exposures. But I think a lot of people don't really understand, you know, why do I pick these filters over other filters like polarizers or gradient filters or even 4-stop or 8-stop filters. So that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video. But first off, let's talk about why I even use ND filters for my landscape photography work. So first of all, I like to do things like long exposure and smooth out water, like I said in the beginning. And what ND filters essentially do is take away light that's coming into your camera. So for a 3-stop filter, let's just say, it'll reduce your light input by about 3 stops. So that means I can get my shutter speed from around 1/500th of a second all the way down to about 1/60th of a second. So when it comes to what a stop is a measurement of light, and that is based off of 2 times the ISO exposure. So 1 stop ISO increase from, let's just say, 1600 ISO would be to 3200 ISO, so you're just doubling that number. The same goes for shutter speed, it's just doubling it. So if I want to increase my shutter speed by a stop, let's say I go from 160, I have to go to 1/25th of a second. And then for aperture, it's actually times 1.4. So like I said, if you have an f2 aperture, you have to multiply that by 1.4 in order to get 2.8. That is 1 stop of light. So for a landscape photographer, picking out the right filter is extremely important because you don't want to be stuck with filters that do something that you thought they did but actually don't. And that's why I think ND filters are a perfect thing for that. It just gives you more options as a landscape photographer. You can do more with it. You can be more creative and kind of create the photographs you envision. It can be great for eliminating people in the frame because, you know, I don't like to have people in my landscape photography. It can also do things like, again, move clouds, smooth out water, create motion in the water. It can do a lot of different things. So let's talk about these 2 filters that I have here today. The first one is the B+W 3-stop ND filter. This is a great filter. I've used it for a while. It's really sharp, minimal color cast. And you'll notice as you get more up into the stoppage range of these filters that the color cast will be definitely increased, more vignetting and so on. So a 3-stop filter shouldn't really have a problem with that. But I've had 2-stop filters that had really bad color cast and just was not pleasant to use. So this one is really good. The reason why I use this 3-stop filter in particular is because you want to show motion in the water mainly. So when water is coming in, I want to have about a half a second exposure to a full second exposure because that allows me to essentially showcase the water moving. And that's going to be really important, especially if I'm close up to the water. If I'm shooting, let's just say, a nice cliff area and I want to showcase the water moving because I'm closer to the water. So the way you would get 1/2 of a second exposures on this is if you had a 16-second shutter speed, for example, going down 3 stops would get you to that half a second exposure. For water that's more fast moving, I'd probably use a half a second exposure versus water that's more slower moving. I'd probably use something like a second exposure. It just depends what you want to work with. You can mess around with it and do what you want. But that's why a 3-stop filter is so important, and it's why I use this filter over pretty much a 4-stop or a 6-stop. Because it's just enough stoppage of light to get me down to where I want to, and it's specifically meant for, you know, creating that motion in the water rather than trying to smooth it out. That's not the goal of this filter. And most of the time when I'm shooting photographs, it's usually at closer to dawn time, closer to sunset. Because I'm closer to a darker point in the day, I'm not gonna really have to worry about, you know, oh, this isn't enough stoppage for my filter. It does a pretty good job and I'm really happy with it. So if a 3-stop filter is meant to, you know, showcase movement in the water, showcase all that good stuff, then a 10-stop filter would do something of the opposite. Because this is a very dark filter, You know, what this is meant to do is essentially smooth out clouds, showcases moving clouds, and when you're farther away from the water, it can smooth out the water entirely. I can get pretty much 30-second exposures from this or more, depending on how much light there is. So for example, if you had one 32-second of a shutter speed, you can go to 30-second shutter speed with this 10-stop filter. Now that's a lot of stops. And for me, this is perfect. Because most of the time when I'm shooting lakes especially, or when I'm shooting those beaches that I'm kind of far away from, I'm able to smooth out the water, make it look nice and clean, and really just have a great photo overall. And because you're getting a 30-second long exposure, you're able to kind of eliminate people, and you can just take out moving subjects. For example, if you're in a water type of area, you can eliminate boats and stuff that are moving. So this is really useful for that as well. But like I said, when talking about the 3-stop filter, this 10-stop filter is going to have quite a bit of vignetting, a little bit of color cast, but it's definitely manageable compared to other filters. And that's something that I'm not really having a problem with, because there's always post-production, you can always edit it out and stuff, and it actually looks pretty good at the end of the day. So great for situations with a lot of light, smoothing out water, smoothing out people, making sure you get rid of motion and so forth. It's a great filter for that. And I've used, if I can only have one filter, and for the longest time I only had this one filter, so that just shows, you know, if you really just need one filter, I think this is it for you. The reason why I like to use circular filters over those square filters is because, first of all, they're smaller, and second of all, you know, they're able to just screw on to the actual lens itself. There's not this whole big process that has to happen. So I can go ahead and just throw on a filter and then throw my camera in the bag and not really have to worry about taking down this whole setup. That's why I like using circular filters over square filters. I know that square filters are gonna have less vignetting, they just have a few benefits, but for me, these do really well. They perform extremely well, and I'm just happy with them. So let's talk about the other two types of filters that are pretty prominent when it comes to landscape photographers. The first one is circular polarizers. The reason I don't use circular polarizers is because I don't really care for the effect that they give. They're supposed to deepen greens, deepen blues, and kind of get rid of reflections in the water and kind of other stuff you're shooting. Don't really need any of that. I don't really care for the look. You know, that's just a personal preference type of thing. If you like that kind of stuff, you can go for it. But for me, I like having those reflections in the water. I also don't really care for those heightened blues and heightened greens, because if I really wanted that, I can just do that in post, so that's not really a problem for me. But if that's the type of look you like, then you can go ahead and do just that. And also, gradient filters are, I feel like nowadays especially, are a bit more pointless, because when you're shooting your landscape photos, for me at least, I always expose for the highlights and bring those shadows up in post. That's essentially the job that gradient filters do. And I feel like because my Nikon Z6 has such a great dynamic range and low ISO range, I really don't have to worry about overblown highlights or too noisy shadowy areas, because I can really just bring it back in post, not really a big problem. So gradient filters I don't really need them. There was a point in time where I felt like I needed them, but now I think I'm okay with what I have. So when it comes to your landscape photography, picking out filters is your decision, and you need to think, you know, what type of photos do I want? What am I looking for when it comes to my landscape photos? And that's something you have to decide. But I think for about 99% of photographers, this is perfect. This is all you need: a 10-stop filter and a 3-stop filter. Or if you really wanted to, you can go with a 4 and an 8-stop. You essentially just want one filter that will help you show motion in the water. It'll give you that half a second or full second long exposure. That's what that 3-stop filter is meant to do. And the 10-stop filter, you know, you want to be able to smooth out water, smooth out those clouds, get rid of motion, and all that great stuff. So it just depends for you on your landscape photography. But like I said, 95% of photographers only really need these two filters, especially for landscape photography. So let me know what you guys think of this video down in the comment section down below. Let me know which filters you guys use for your landscape photography. Anyways, guys, that is it for me. Rate, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.